Good afternoon. I'm Brent Holland, and welcome one and all to today's show. This afternoon, we continue with Living History, Mark Lane. Mark Lane, the lawyer for the American Indian Movement, Wounded Knee, 1973. There was an uprising in 1973 by Native Americans. Their leadership on the reservation had become corrupt, and they were resisting that corruption, so they stood up and banded together. Now, what took place there became a 71-day struggle between activists and armed FBI agents and the National Guard. Those occupying believed the conditions were so drastic that they had to take a stand. Many expected to be killed like their ancestors previously in 1890, and 2 did indeed die. Mark Lane.
First of all, it was called the occupation of Wounded Knee by the American Indian Movement. It was their reservation. Indians lived there for many, many decades. They didn't occupy it all of a sudden. They had always occupied it since they were driven there and placed on reservations. But what happened is that the Bureau of Indian Affairs, part of the United States government, was in cahoots with the local folks there who ran the place, Dickie Wilson, who was a tribal leader, etc. And there was actually a reign of terror on the reservation in which people have been brutalized, beaten, some killed, and many of them threatened if they were not part of the leadership there. And finally, Russell Means, who was in the Oglala Sioux, and this is a reservation of the Oglala Sioux, who lived there, and some others were beaten up in a parking lot, and they called themselves the Goon Squad. They were beating up this woman, Indian woman. Russell tried to intervene. He was beaten badly.
This afternoon, Living History, Mark Lane, lawyer for the American Indian Movement, Wounded Knee, 1973, right now on Brent Holland. Folks, if you're just joining us, Mark Lane is our guest this afternoon. He's an author, a lawyer, a teacher, a lecturer, a filmmaker. He's written 8 books on contemporary legal issues. He was in Jonestown during the massacre. His acclaimed bestseller, Rush to Judgment, A Critique of the Warren Commission. He was asked by Marguerite Oswald to represent Lee Harvey Oswald's interests. He was there at Wounded Knee, 1973, representing AIM, American Indian Movement. He's our guest this afternoon. If you want more information on him and some links to the show, www.brenthollandshow.com, www.brenthollandshow.com. As always, just click on the book cover there or Mark's name, take you to a place where you can pick up his book and get more information on Mark. Have you got enough energy to go into Wounded Knee?
Wounded Knee. First of all, it was called the occupation of Wounded Knee by the American Indian Movement. It was their reservation. Indians lived there for many, many decades. They didn't occupy it all of a sudden. They had always occupied it since they were driven there and placed on reservations. But what happened is that the Bureau of Indian Affairs, part of the United States government, was in cahoots with the local folks there who ran the place, Dickie Wilson, who was a tribal leader, etc. And there was actually a reign of terror on the reservation in which people have been brutalized, beaten, some killed, and many of them threatened if they were not part of the leadership there. And finally, Russell Means, who was in the Oglala Sioux, and this is a reservation of the Oglala Sioux, who lived there, and some others were beaten up in a parking lot, and they called themselves the Goon Squad. They were beating up this woman, Indian woman. Russell tried to intervene. He was beaten badly. A lawyer who worked with them for the federal government came on the scene. You have to leave at once, or we're going to kill you. That ended all legal services on the reservation, which is an organization set up by Sergeant Shriver, I think, years before, making lawyers available to the reservation, and they were driven off. And so Russell and a few of his other friends went into Wounded Knee, where the last massacre against Indians had taken place in the United States, Wounded Knee, South Dakota, and occupied it, and they were there for 71 days, I believe. They asked me to represent them. I met with them, went into the area several times, got a judge who allowed me to bring some carloads of food in for the kids who were starving in there, which is what we did. I was shot at a couple of times, and the FBI and the marshals were on the outside shooting in, firing flares, firing tear gas at this community, women and children and men who were in that area and who were not allowed to leave, actually. They were being shot at. 2 of them were killed in there, others have been wounded. In any event, they were all arrested and charged with 11 felonies. We were able to get the case moved from South Dakota. It would have been like trying a case with black defendants before an all-white jury in Mississippi in the 1950s or 40s or 30s. if this case had to be tried in South Dakota. But we moved it to St. Paul. The judge was an enlightened judge, Fred Nickel, senior judge of South Dakota. He moved it to St. Paul, where there was a really intelligent jury. And we were picking the jurors, selecting jurors, and one of them was a young woman. And the judge said, did any of you know the people here? And many of them came forward. This woman came forward and said, I don't know Mr. Lane, but I've read his book, and his book, Rush to Judgment, changed my life. I was so moved by what I learned. The other side didn't challenge her, didn't try to remove her. And I never talked to the prosecution during the case. This was a case which went on for 9 months. But the first day I was down in a bar across the street in a lounge called the Smuggler's Inn, high-level place right across the street, a luxury building, and having a drink with my clients, and the prosecutor was there, the government's deputy attorney. The prosecutor was there. And I said, R.D., I never talked to the prosecutors. I'm not going to talk to you again during the trial. I just want to ask you a question. Are you happy with the jury? He said, yes. I said, so am I. That's really unusual. Both sides are happy. Mm-hmm. I want to ask about this one woman. Did you know that she said she was moved by my book? He said, yes, I did. I said, you left her on? He said, yes. I said, why? He said, she's an attractive young chick, and she's going to be in love with me before this trial is over. Oh. Okay, so that was, the trial went on months. Bill Kunstler represented one client. I represented another. We also had other lawyers working with us. And it went on a long time, and we uncovered evidence that the key witness at the end was going to be a man named Louis Movescamp. Well, first of all, we uncovered evidence that the FBI had wiretapped our conversations with our clients. And although the FBI denied that it had ever taken place, we asked for a hearing, and we put, his name was Trimback, Joseph Trimback, on the stand. And he said he had never been involved in wiretapping, never even filed an application, wouldn't even know what an application for a legal wiretap looks like, because he never was involved in any of that. I then produced several documents which he had signed, which were applications made out by him for legal wiretapping in other cases. So the judge said basically he's committed perjury, he's a liar, and I have to discount everything. So that was one thing. And then I had prepared this motion called the Reign of Terror motion, saying that we can't get a fair trial. I know it's not in South Dakota, but these witnesses come from South Dakota, and they have to go back to South Dakota after the trial, after they testify, and people are being killed on that reservation now. And these will be targets. And even the judge considered that. And then finally there was one outrageous thing at the end of the trial. A guy named Louis Movescamp, who was going to testify as the key witness. We got the documents which said we put him on the stand as a cinched victory, etc. And he claimed that he was in Woodby the whole time, except he was actually in San Francisco and on radio shows and TV shows, and we had all the tape showing where he was, actually. And so that he lied about that. But we also discovered that 2 FBI agents were taking care of him. He was in their custody in Wisconsin at a resort area. And they all went out drinking one night, and he stayed a little later, met a young woman, very young girl, and raped her, sodomized her, raped her, and came back and told that to the FBI. I didn't say he raped her, he just said he had a great time with this woman. A prosecutor came to the FBI. This stuff I uncovered, it took a while. I went up to Wisconsin, found the prosecutor wouldn't talk to me, but his wife did, gave us information. We found other witnesses. The prosecutor was told by the FBI agents not to prosecute because he's going to be a key witness in a few days. And the prosecutor said to him, the FBI agent said to him, don't worry, Louis, we're going to take care of it. So I said to the judge, the jury's entitled to hear this. And he said, what's your theory? I said, Movescamp will do anything they tell him to do. He obviously was going to lie anyway, but now they said, don't worry, we're going to take care of it because he's a witness. And the jury has a right, and the judge said, yes, they have a right to hear that. And so the jury heard all of that, and they were out for a short period of time, and one of the women on the jury had a stroke. And they said that the doctor examined her and said she couldn't continue. And I said, okay, let's have a jury of 11. The judge said, can you do that? I said, we're entitled to a jury of 12. We're entitled to it. The more the better, because you need it one to prevent a conviction. But you can have a jury of a lesser number if both sides agree and the judge agrees. The judge said, I agree. I said, we agree. The U.S. attorney said, we have to think about it, etc.
You're listening to The Brent Holland Show. For more information on today's guests, as well as free podcasts and downloads, please go to the www.brenthollandshow.com website, www.brenthollandshow.com. Folks, if you're just joining us this afternoon, Mark Lane is our guest. Polly Perrette from NCIS is doing a documentary on Mr. Lane. And, of course, Polly Perrette plays Abby on NCIS. She's doing a documentary on him called Citizen Lane that should be out, I guess, within the next year or so. It should be hitting all the festivals and stuff, maybe even here at CineFest. That would be nice to see. Mark Lane, of course, living history, folks, this afternoon. He has served with the New York State Legislature, worked as a New York City campaign manager for John F. Kennedy. He represented the American Indian movement at the historic Wounded Knee trial and was the only public official arrested as a Freedom Rider.
There was a reporter for the Minneapolis Tribune, Star Tribune, named Denny Cassano, who was really great. He covered the whole trial, very fair. The judge liked him. I knew he was on our side, but that's because the evidence was. But you couldn't tell that from his articles. He was very straight down the middle. Anyway, he called me about 2 o'clock that morning and said, I've just been meeting with R.G. Hurd. I got to talk to you. So he came over and he said, this is what Hurd said. This judge is a so-and-so Indian lover, and Elaine and the Indians got him in the hip pocket, on and on vicious attacks on the judge. And we're not going to agree to this. We want a mistrial because we're going to get the judge recused. We're going to get a new judge. We're going to try the case differently. We're not going to have it in the same pool. We're going to go back to South Dakota. All of these plans. He's drunk. He kept on and on and on, saying, really using profane language in describing the judge. And I said, so why are you telling me this, Danny? He said, you don't find it interesting? I said, it's very interesting, but he's saying that I can actually use this in court. He said, yes, as a journalist, it's not a problem. He said, Mark, I was an American before I was a journalist. And so he wrote out an affidavit for me, declaration, and we came to court, and I told the judge about it the next day in chambers. The judge knew me, and he knew I was not making up this story, but he also could not believe that this guy, deputy prosecutor, who was U.S. attorney, had done this. But he knew I wasn't lying. And then I said, and it's an affidavit from Denny Cassano telling the whole story. And then he's out in the courtroom, Your Honor, and he said he'll be happy to come in and face cross-examination by anybody, and he'll tell you all the details. And the judge said that won't be necessary. Then he said to them, to the U.S. attorney, I want you to agree to a jury of 11. But then the attorney general had said no. And he said, Mr. Lane, I want you to prepare that motion to dismiss, your rate of term motion, add this to it, I'm going to grant it. And after 9 months of the trial, the judge ordered a dismissal of all charges. He said, I won't do an acquittal because that way the government can't appeal, and I want them to appeal. I want a court of appeals to look at their misconduct. So he ordered this, and the only reason Hurd had for saying that they wanted a mistrial was that this woman was the strongest juror for conviction. I said, what, have you wiretapped the jury room also? How do you know what they're talking about in there? Well, it turned out she was actually the strongest person arguing for the acquittal, and when one of the guys on the jury said, well, I don't know about that, she was so upset she had a stroke in arguing with him. So we won, and then 9 of the jurors who I met with later, 9 of the 12 jurors went with me to Washington to meet with the Attorney General to ask that all prosecutions be halted based upon what they had learned. It's the first time I think that ever happened in the history of our judicial system, that the jurors went to the government and said, stop all these prosecutions.
Wow.
Anyway, that's the Wounded Knee story. I'm really thinking now, I just finished my autobiography.
Yes, sir.
Called Dancing with Bullies, and it's in the hands of some publishers now. But there's a chapter in there. There's a chapter in there all about Canada, and why don't we talk about that some other time? It's a really interesting story.
Absolutely. If you'd like to, I'd love to have you come back. I have thoroughly enjoyed this. Can you just tell us a little bit about Polly Perrette and what she has planned for you? Polly Perrette, of course, folks, if you watch, I was going to say CSI Miami.
NCIS.
Thank you very much, and I just watched it last night, as a matter of fact.
She's Abby,
That's
forensic pathologist on NCIS.
That's right.
With Mark Harmon is the guy there, too. Yes. She called me about 3 years ago. I didn't know her. She said that she is really interested in making a documentary film. I said, okay, can I help? She said, you can help a lot. I said, in what way? And she said, because the name of the film is Citizen Lane, and it's the story of your life. And I'd like you to cooperate with me. I said, sure. And so she came here. I live in Charlottesville now, Virginia. Mm-hmm. Thomas Jefferson's home. Monticello's right down the block.
Beautiful.
She came, bought a Volvo station wagon, got a lot of camera equipment, got a cameraman, And they drove here from L.A. because she has two little dogs who she has rescued. One of them bites everybody because he was so brutalized his teeth were all kicked in. And the tiny little thing is, as big as my shoe or something. She would never leave them. So she couldn't fly, and she wanted to have it. So they drove from Los Angeles all across the country here and spent the summer. They have time off in the summer from the show, and then did it again the next year. We went to East Harlem where my office was, and my high school and elementary school in Brooklyn, and they heard me lecture at universities and stuff like that. And she's gotten all this stuff together, and I don't even know what it is. I just saw a 1-minute trailer, which was really impressive. And she said she said it's very close to finishing. In 5 weeks it'll all be done. It's been like a 2.5, 3-year project now. And the name is Citizen Lane, and they're going to try to enter it into all the festivals, and we'll see what happens when it
That's
comes
fabulous, Mark. Congratulations.
Yeah, I'm excited about it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I've been very selfish tonight. I have thoroughly enjoyed this, Mark, and
I'm happy. I'm glad that you have, and it's good talking with you.
And I'm sure the listeners have too. Folks, real live history tonight. Mark Lane, phenomenal. I mean, all these things he's experienced, witnessed, and done for the betterment of man. And that's the thing. That's the bottom line. He's helped people all the way along here.
Very grateful for you. Very kind words. It's good talking to you. And let's do it again sometime in the near future. And I'll tell you a remarkable story. It's a chapter in my book. It's called Oh, Canada. And it's about 30 seconds, okay?
Sure.
It's about 10% of the Air Force in Vietnam, Colonel Key's Air Force, was always in Texas at a base, training and retaining training. Of course, I was very active in the anti-war movement, wanted that war to end. And I got a phone call one day from someone who said that there's somebody who wants to meet with me. And this guy was a Vietnamese guy when I was living in Washington. And he came, we met, and he said he was a pilot for Colonel Key. He was about to go back to Vietnam and was told he had to bomb civilians in Vietnam. He said, these are my own people, but that's what Colonel Key is insisting that we do, to terrorize the population. I don't want to do it, so can you get sanctuary for me in the United States? That's why I came to ask you. And I said, the United States is responsible for the war. What will happen if you ask for sanctuary and it's denied, as it will be? He said, then I'd be sent back and I'd be executed. And I said, well, if you ask for sanctuary here, you're going to be, it will be denied. So there's no hope. I said, I have an idea. Let me think about it. And give me a couple of hours to go to the Library of Congress, which is right across the street from my office, and do some research. And he said, okay. And we met 2 hours later, again at a restaurant. And he was thinking maybe I was going to have him arrested. I was thinking maybe he was setting me up. We both thought the other one was going to arrest me. Well, we thought that was a possibility. We didn't know. We both set aside this mistrust and decided to work together. I said, the only way I think it's possible for you is if you went to Canada and asked for asylum in Canada. Canadians are not involved in this war the way the United States government is, and I think they might well treat you fairly. He said, how would I get to Canada? Well, that's the whole story. I mean, how they got to Canada is the whole story, which I won't tell now. But anytime you like in the future, I will. And I can tell you this. Every week, 3 or 4 people from that base, pilots, went to Canada. And there was a large contingency of them in Canada when the war ended. It really weakened Colonel Key's Air Force.
Wow. I had no idea this story.
Nobody knows that story.
No, this is tantalizing now. You see, you've planted a seed, and now folks are saying, get him back on, So we will arrange another time.
Terrific. You talk to Sue, talk to her again. She handles all those things.
And again, Mark, thank you so much. I mean, from the bottom of my heart, I have been watching Rush to Judgment, Executive Action, since the 60s, the 70s, the 80s, and your career as well. And I can't believe I've just talked with you for 2 hours.
Well, I've enjoyed talking with you too, Brent. And we'll do it again.
Thank you so much, my friend, and all the very best to you.
Thank you so much. Bye.
Take care now. Bye-bye.
You're listening to The Brent Holland Show. For more information on today's guests, as well as free podcasts and downloads, please go to the www.brenthollandshow.com website, www.brenthollandshow.com. Folks, Mark Lane, wasn't that incredible? Wow. Real life history. Mark Lane, of course, first whistleblower for the JFK assassination way back in 1963. Fast forward 10 years, 1973. He represented AIM, which is the American Indian Movement, at Wounded Knee. And then fast forward another 5 years, 1978, November, he was in Jonestown when the murders took place. And I call them murders, even though they were kind of assisted assassinations. And his life was on the line. He was supposed to be executed, and he took us all the way through that. Whoa. His book, of course, Plausible Denial. Was the CIA involved in the assassination of JFK? Most definitely. Without question, as you all know, from all the folks we've had on the show from time to time. And you know my views on it. Of course, without question, it was a conspiracy. And the only reason why there hasn't been disclosure is what I'm trying to figure out now. Why was there no disclosure up until this point? That was supposed to be an hour interview. I have thoroughly enjoyed this. I sincerely want to thank Mark Lane for joining us this afternoon and taking us right there, center stage, at Wounded Knee 1973. Mark Lane will join us again for 2 more shows of living history. You see, folks, Mark Lane was there in the thick of things, center stage, his whole life. As a matter of fact, we're going to go back to 1964, a year after President Kennedy's assassination by the purported assassin, Lee Harvey Oswald. Now, why is this important? Because Lee Harvey Oswald's mother, Marguerite Oswald, contacted Mark Lane to represent Lee Harvey Oswald in front of the Warren Commission, even though he'd already been assassinated. What Mark Lane uncovered has been the foundation of all the conspiracy material to today. As a matter of fact, in the early 1970s, a Hollywood feature film with Hollywood's top-notch actors like Burt Lancaster came out called Executive Action. It was a scathing expose of a possible conspiracy against the president. And make no mistake, folks, I, for one, have studied the assassination, and without question, I can guarantee to you it was indeed a conspiracy. More on that later. Right now, Mark Lane.
So I wrote the legislation which set up the House Select Committee on Assassinations as a committee of the United States House of Representatives. And I traveled around the country, spoke at 180 colleges and universities and law schools, formed citizens' commissions of inquiry at each of them, and together all of us got more than 1 million letters and telegrams to members of Congress demanding that there be an investigation. And so they formed the House Select Committee on Assassinations. And a lot of people don't realize that, there's a few people who say the Warren Commission was correct, etc., and that's the official government position. It's not the official government position. The last official government position on the question was the House Select Committee on Assassinations, which said in all probability there had been a conspiracy to kill President Kennedy, and in all probability there had been a conspiracy to kill Martin Luther King Jr.
That's right.
So that's the official position of the United States government now, which a lot of people miss.
As always, folks, www.BrentHollandShow.com. Real live history, great for research. You get the true story of the people that were there during these historical moments. They're on-the-ground perspectives, real live history. Quote them directly. This is the truth. These are the folks that were right there. You can't get any more real than that, folks. I'm Brent Holland. Thank you all for listening. Keep those emails coming. See you next time.